My brother's fingerprints were on Sarah's body. I cuffed him, my heart breaking. His letter said he didn't act alone. I tracked a lead to a familiar name. I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee at the Springfield precinct when the radio crackled to life. Dispatch's voice cut through the static, sharp and urgent. All units, we've got a 1031, possible armed intruder at 1427 Maple Drive, Springfield, Illinois. Female caller reported a break-in. Proceed with caution. My partner, Dave, shot me a look. We didn't need words. I tossed the coffee in the trash, grabbed my vest, and we bolted to the cruiser. The night was cold, the kind that seeps into your bones. Springfield's suburbs were quiet, streetlights flickering on empty roads. Maple Drive was a tidy row of bungalows, but number 1427 stood out. The front yard was dark, no porch light, no movement. My gut twisted. Something felt wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. We pulled up, lights off, and scanned the house. The windows were black, curtains drawn tight. Dave whispered, "You think she's still in there?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hand rested on my holster as we crept toward the front door. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crunch of gravel under our boots. The door was ajar, not wide open, just a crack, enough to make my heart pound harder. I nudged it with my boot, gun drawn, and called out, "Springfield PD, anyone in there, come out now." Nothing. No screams, no footsteps, just a heavy stillness that made my skin crawl. We stepped inside, flashlights cutting through the dark. The living room was a mess couch, cushions slashed, a lamp tipped over, glass scattered across the hardwood. It looked like a struggle, violent and quick. My stomach churned. I prayed the caller, Sarah Mitchell, was hiding somewhere. Safe. Check the kitchen, I told Dave, my voice low. He nodded and moved left. I headed for the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The air grew thicker, a faint metallic smell hitting me as I reached the second floor. My flashlight swept the hallway, landing on a half-open bedroom door. I pushed it open, and my breath caught. Sarah Mitchell was there, sprawled across the bed. Her eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, lifeless. Blood soaked the sheets, pooling beneath her. A deep gash marred her throat, jagged and brutal. I froze, my heart hammering so loud I thought it had burst. "Dave!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Up here now!" Dave's boots thundered up the stairs. He stopped dead in the doorway, his face paling. "Jesus," he muttered, crossing himself. I couldn't look away from Sarah. She was young, maybe 30, with auburn hair matted with blood. Her hands were curled, like she'd fought back. I wanted to believe she was still alive, that we'd gotten there in time, but she was gone, probably minutes before we arrived. I forced myself to move, to do my job. "Secure the scene," I said, my voice hollow. Dave radioed for backup while I scanned the room. No sign of the weapon, no footprints, no obvious clues. Just Sarah, cold and still, and that sickening smell of blood. I'd seen death before car accidents, overdoses, but this was different. This was personal, raw, like the killer wanted us to feel their rage. We swept the rest of the house. Back door was locked, windows secure, no signs of forced entry except that front door. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They were in and out, fast. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. Was she targeted? Random? The questions gnawed at me as we taped off the scene. Forensics arrived, their cameras flashing like lightning in the dark house. I stood outside, the cold air biting my face, trying to shake the image of Sarah's lifeless body. Dave clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, Mike?" he asked. I nodded, but I wasn't. Something about this felt too close, too real. I didn't know it then, but this case would unravel my life, piece by piece, starting with a truth I wasn't ready to face. Growing up in Springfield, Illinois, my older brother James was the kind of guy who could charm the socks off anyone. He was the golden child, the one our parents fawned over, their pride and joy. Me? I was just Mike, the quiet kid trailing in his shadow. James had this smile, this way of talking that made people trust him instantly. But I saw things others didn't, things that gnawed at me even as a kid. When we were young, maybe 8 or 9, James ruled the playground at Lincoln Elementary. He was taller, stronger, older than the rest of us, and he knew it. He never threw a punch himself, but he'd whisper in the ears of smaller kids, convincing them to do his bidding. I remember this one time. A kid named Tommy brought a shiny new remote-controlled car to school. It was the talk of the playground, all sleek metal and flashing lights. James wanted it, bad, but he didn't just take it. No, that wasn't his style. He pulled 2 younger kids aside, Timmy and Jake, and spun a story. "Get that car during recess," he said, voice smooth as silk. "I'll let you play with it later." They nodded like eager puppies, and sure enough, while James watched from the swings, they snatched the car from Tommy's bag. When Tommy realized it was gone, he cried, his face red and blotchy. The teachers swooped in, asking questions, but James? He was all innocence, offering to help search for it. "Don't worry, Tommy," he said, patting the kid's shoulder. "We'll find it." That night, I saw the car hidden under his bed. He never gave those kids a turn. It wasn't just toys. One summer, when I was 10, a crisp $100 bill went missing from Dad's wallet. Our parents tore the house apart, checking couch cushions, kitchen drawers, even my room. I was terrified they'd blame me. But James, he was cool as ice. He jumped up, all eager, saying, "I'll help look." He rifled through cabinets, made a big show of it, while Mom and Dad praised his effort. "Such a good son," Mom said, ruffling his hair. They never suspected him, not even when they gave up and slipped him a 50 as a thank you. I saw the smirk on his face when they weren't looking. That bill was long gone, probably spent on candy or comic books. As we got older, James's charm grew sharper, but so did his recklessness. By high school, he was running with a rough crowd guys who smoked behind the gym, skipped class, and chased trouble for kicks. I was the good kid, studying, keeping my head down, but James, he thrived on chaos. When he was 18, he and his buddies broke into Springfield High after hours. No plan, no reason, just the thrill of it. They smashed a window, trashed a couple of classrooms, and spray-painted crude drawings on the walls. The security cameras caught them, and the cops showed up at our door. I'll never forget Mom's face, pale as a ghost, or Dad's, torn between shock and denial. Not our James, they said, like it was impossible. When the police left, James just shrugged, like he'd spilled milk, not committed a crime. Mom and Dad sat him down, their voices soft, pleading. "You're better than this, James," Dad said. "No grounding, no punishment, just a pat on the back and a promise to do better." He nodded, all serious, then snuck out the next night to meet the same crew. It was like he was testing them, seeing how far he could push before they'd snap. They never did. I tried to talk to him once, after the school break-in. "You're gonna get in real trouble one day," I said, my voice shaking. He just laughed, that easy, careless laugh. "Relax, Mike, I've got this." But I saw the glint in his eyes, like he enjoyed the game too much. It scared me, even then. Years later, standing outside Sarah Mitchell's house, her blood still fresh on the sheets upstairs, those memories came flooding back. James's charm, his knack for dodging consequences, his reckless streak, it all felt like a warning I'd ignored. I pushed the thought away, told myself it was just the stress talking, but deep down, a part of me wondered. Had James's games gotten bigger, darker? Had he crossed a line I couldn't even imagine? I stood there, the cold Springfield air biting my face, as forensics worked the scene behind me. My radio crackled with updates, but all I could hear was that laugh, that smirk, those moments when James got away with everything. I didn't know it yet, but the truth was coming, and it would break me. The forensics team worked through the night at Sarah Mitchell's house, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. I stood outside, the Springfield air cold and sharp, my mind stuck on her lifeless body upstairs. Dave was talking to the lead tech, but I barely heard their voices. My world felt like it was tilting, and I didn't know why. Not yet. Back at the precinct, the mood was grim. We gathered in the briefing room, the whiteboard already filling with notes about Sarah's case. The lead detective, Karen, pinned up a photo of Sarah, her smile frozen in a snapshot from better days. I swallowed hard, trying to focus. Then Karen dropped the bomb. "We've got a hit on the fingerprints," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "They're on the body. Clear match. They belong to James Carter." My heart stopped. James, my brother. The room spun, faces blurring as Karen's words echoed in my head. "No," I said, barely a whisper. "That's not possible." Everyone turned to look at me. Dave's eyes widened. He knew James was my brother. Karen frowned, her pen pausing. "You okay, Mike?" she asked. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. I felt like I was drowning. I stumbled to the evidence room, needing to see it for myself. The tech handed me the report. There it was, in black and white. James's fingerprints, lifted from Sarah's wrist, her neck. My stomach twisted. I knew James had dated Sarah years ago, back when we were in our 20s. It was a messy breakup, lots of yelling, but murder? My brother? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I grabbed my phone and called him, straight to voicemail. I tried again, then again, my pulse racing. "James, pick up, damn it," I muttered, pacing the precinct hallway. Nothing. My mind flashed to his smirk, that careless laugh from our childhood. Was this another game? Another lie? I pushed the thought away, but it clung to me, heavy and cold. I drove to James's apartment on the edge of Springfield, my cruiser's lights off to avoid attention. The building was run down, paint peeling, a flickering streetlight buzzing overhead. His door was locked, but the landlord let me in after I flashed my badge. Inside, it was chaos. Clothes strewn across the floor, drawers yanked open, a half-eaten sandwich on the counter. His safe, tucked in the corner, was wide open and empty. My chest tightened. He was gone, fled like a guilty man. I searched the place, desperate for something to prove this was a mistake, a receipt, a note, anything. But all I found was a photo, tucked under a pile of shirts. It was James and Sarah years ago, smiling at a bar downtown. Her arm was around him, but his eyes, they looked distant. Even then, I stuffed the photo in my pocket, my hands trembling. The evidence was piling up, and it all pointed to him. Back at the precinct, Karen pulled me aside. "Mike, we found more," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Sarah's social media shows she and James were in contact recently. Texts, late-night calls. Looks like they were fighting again." I stared at her, my throat dry. "Fighting about what?" I managed to ask. She shrugged. "Money, maybe. Or old wounds. We're still digging." I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that James couldn't do this, but the fingerprints, the photo, the calls, they were like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. I remembered his recklessness, the way he'd always slipped through the cracks, the stolen money, the broken windows, the lies. Had it all been leading to this? Had I missed the signs? I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. Being a cop meant following the evidence, no matter where it led. But being a brother meant believing in James, even when the world said he was a monster. My heart pounded, torn between duty and blood. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing. James was out there, running, and I had to find him before the truth destroyed us both. The precinct was a hive of activity, phones ringing, radios crackling, as the manhunt for James Carter kicked into high gear. His face was everywhere, plastered on local news in Springfield, Illinois, flashing across TV screens in every diner and gas station. My brother, the golden child, now the city's most wanted. I sat in the briefing room, staring at his mugshot, my stomach churning. How had it come to this? The evidence was damning. Fingerprints on Sarah Mitchell's body, their history, his empty apartment. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but doubt was eating me alive. I barely slept, my eyes burning as I pored over case files, searching for anything to clear his name. But every lead pointed back to James. My colleagues avoided me, their whispers trailing behind. Mike's brother, they'd say, like it was a curse. Then, 3 days later, a break. A motel manager on the outskirts of Springfield called in a tip. "Guy checked in last night, looked like your suspect," he said. Used a fake name, John Smith. My heart raced. It had to be James. I grabbed my gear, Dave at my side, and we sped toward the Sunset Motel, a rundown joint off Route 55. The neon sign flickered, half dead, as we pulled into the gravel lot. We surrounded the building, cops fanning out, guns drawn. The air was thick, the kind of quiet that screams trouble. My chest tightened as I pictured James inside, maybe armed, maybe desperate. I prayed it wouldn't come to that. I prayed I wouldn't have to be the one to take him down. Room 12 was his. I stood at the door, my knuckles white around my radio. "James, it's Mike," I called, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Come out, hands up. Don't make this harder." Silence. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, a creak. The door inched open, and there he was. James looked like a ghost of himself. His hair was greasy, his eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He raised his hands slowly, his gaze locking onto mine. "Mike," he said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't do it. You gotta believe me." His words hit like a punch. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But the fingerprints, the evidence, it was all too much. "On your knees," I said, my voice cracking. He hesitated, his eyes pleading, but he complied. I moved forward, my hands shaking as I pulled the cuffs from my belt. The metal clicked around his wrists, cold and final. Each snap felt like a betrayal, like I was locking away a piece of myself. Dave watched, his face unreadable, as I led James to the cruiser. He kept talking, his voice low, desperate. "I was set up, Mike. Someone's playing us. You know me." I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers. "Why were your fingerprints on her? Why did you run?" But I stayed silent, my jaw tight, as I shoved him into the back seat. The door slammed shut, and I leaned against the car, my breath ragged. The other cops moved in, securing the scene, but all I could see was James's face, begging me to trust him. Driving back to the precinct, I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He stared out the window, his shoulders slumped. "You're my brother," he said softly. "You know I couldn't do this." My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached. I wanted to believe him, to go back to when we were kids, when he was just the charming troublemaker who always got away. But Sarah's blood-soaked body flashed in my mind, and I couldn't shake it. At the station, they booked him. I stood outside the holding cell, watching as they took his prints again, his photo. He looked at me through the bars, his eyes hollow. "Help me, Mike," he said, barely a whisper. I turned away, my chest heavy, torn between the badge I wore and the brother I loved. The truth was out there, but it felt like a noose tightening around us both. The courtroom in Springfield, Illinois, felt like a tomb, cold and suffocating. I sat in the back, my hands clenched, as the trial of James Carter unfolded. My brother, the charmer who'd slipped through every crack, now sat at the defendant's table, his face pale, eyes fixed on the floor. The prosecution laid out their case like a sledgehammer, each piece of evidence hitting me harder than the last. They started with the fingerprints. James's prints were on Sarah Mitchell's body, her wrist, her neck, and on the murder weapon, a kitchen knife found hidden in her backyard. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ellen, held up photos of the crime scene, her voice cutting through the silence. "This was no random act," she said. "This was personal, angry, planned." I swallowed hard, my throat dry as she pointed to James. He knew her, he dated her, and he killed her. Next came the timeline. Sarah's neighbors heard screams around 10 p.m., minutes before we'd arrived. James had no alibi, no explanation for where he was. Then there was their history texts and calls pulled from Sarah's phone, arguments about money, old grudges. Ellen painted James as a man consumed by rage, unable to let go of their past. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, but the evidence was a noose tightening around him. I'd been digging myself, late nights at the precinct, combing through every detail. One evening, I found something new in the crime scene photos, a faint smudge on the back door frame, barely noticeable. I had forensics enhance it. My heart sank when the report came back. Another fingerprint, James's, smeared like he'd grabbed the door in a hurry. Underneath, on the ground, was a tiny silver necklace, Sarah's, its clasp broken. It was as if he'd ripped it from her neck in a struggle and fled through that door. The defense tried to fight back, claiming the prints could have been old, from when James and Sarah were together. But the jury wasn't buying it. The necklace, the knife, the timeline, it all fit too perfectly. I sat there, day after day, feeling like I was being torn apart. My parents were in the front row, their faces crumpled, Mom sobbing quietly. They still believed in son James, their golden boy. I wanted to, but the truth was staring me down. James took the stand once, his voice shaking. "I didn't do this, Mike," he said, looking right at me. "You know me." My chest ached, but I couldn't meet his eyes. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady. "Guilty," he said. "First-degree murder, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon." The words hit like a freight train. Life without parole. James didn't react, just stared at the table as they cuffed him. I watched, frozen, as they led him away, his footsteps echoing in the silent courtroom. My parents collapsed into each other, broken. I felt like I'd failed them, failed James, failed myself. The badge on my chest felt like a lie. Every time I put it on, I saw Sarah's body, James's cuffs, the truth I couldn't escape. I couldn't do it anymore. A week later, I walked into the precinct, my resignation letter in hand. "Mike, you sure?" Dave asked, his voice heavy. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I packed my desk photos, coffee mug, years of my life, and left. The station felt like a ghost of itself as I walked out, the weight of the case crushing me. At home, I sat in the dark, replaying it all. The fingerprints, the necklace, James's desperate pleas. I'd been a cop for 10 years, seen the worst of humanity, but this was different. This was my brother. I blamed myself. Could I have stopped him? Seen the signs earlier? The questions ate at me, relentless. I tried to move on, picking up work as a private investigator, but every case felt like a reminder of what I'd lost. James was gone, locked away forever, and I was left with nothing but guilt and a truth I couldn't unsee. Months after James's conviction, I was a shell of myself, drifting through Springfield, Illinois, taking small PI jobs to pay the bills. The weight of the trial clung to me, heavy and unrelenting. I avoided anything that reminded me of Sarah Mitchell's case, her blood-soaked sheets, James's cuffs, the guilty verdict that shattered our family. My parents barely spoke to me, blaming me for not saving their golden boy. I blamed myself too. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. It was in James's handwriting, postmarked from the state prison. My hands trembled as I tore it open, expecting an apology, maybe a plea for a visit. Instead, the words hit me like a gut punch. "Mike, I lied," it read. "I wasn't innocent, but I wasn't alone. There's more to this than you know. I'm sorry." My stomach dropped, the room spinning. Not alone? What the hell did that mean? I read it again, each word burning into me. James admitted he was involved in Sarah's death, but someone else was there? My mind raced, replaying the evidence, the fingerprints, the necklace, the back door. Had I missed something? Someone? I stuffed the letter into a hidden compartment behind a painting in my apartment, my heart pounding. I couldn't let anyone see it, not yet. This wasn't just about James anymore. It was about the truth. I reopened the case, not as a cop, but on my own. I started digging, retracing every step from that night. I tracked down Sarah's old neighbors, her co-workers, anyone who might have seen something. Most slammed doors in my face, tired of the questions, the pain. The trail was cold, but James's words lit a fire in me. I couldn't stop. I needed to know who else was involved, what he was hiding. Late at night, I sat in my dim apartment, crime scene photos spread across the table. My eyes burned, but I kept going, searching for anything I'd overlooked. A name, a face, a clue, something to explain James's confession. Who was he protecting? Or was he playing me again? One last twisted game. The thought made my blood run cold, but I couldn't let it go. The truth was out there, buried, and I'd tear Springfield apart to find it.